Hannah leaned a little closer to the engine, her fingers tracing the edge of a valve with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she was looking at. Then, without warning, she spoke, sharp, focused Japanese pouring out rapidly, filled with technical terms that carried a clear sense of urgency. The staff stared at her, their smiles tightening as they tried to guess what she might be saying. A couple of salesmen stepped forward, nodding politely as if they understood, but within seconds their confidence vanished. Her tone grew more pointed, more urgent, and it became painfully obvious that not a single person in the room understood a word. Whispers spread quietly among the onlookers. Someone muttered, "Do they really not have anyone who speaks Japanese?" Another shook their head in disbelief. The tension thickened as Hannah repeated herself, slower this time, firmer, pointing directly at a specific part of the engine. The staff exchanged helpless looks, their panic rising with every passing second. Her bodyguards were already glancing toward the door, silently asking if they should leave. The billionaire wasn't just misunderstood, she was growing. The morning at the Los Angeles luxury showroom felt ordinary, soft music playing, polished floors shining, salesmen rehearsing their best smiles, until everything shifted in a single moment. A long black limousine rolled up to the entrance, moving with the kind of quiet authority that made everyone pause. The doors opened slowly, and stepping out was a woman the staff had only ever seen in magazines, Hana Kiyamizu, the famously private Japanese billionaire whose presence could silence a room without a single word. Her security team entered first, scanning every corner with sharp precision, and then she walked in, calm, composed, and unreadable. The click of her designer heels against the marble floor echoed like a countdown. The staff froze, trying to look confident while their nerves rattled underneath. They had trained for VIP guests, but no one had prepared for her, someone powerful, silent, and completely unapproachable. Without greeting anyone, Hannah moved straight toward the rare vintage engine on display, the centerpiece of the showroom. She examined it closely, her expression revealing nothing. Employees exchanged anxious glances, wondering. Daniel felt the weight of every year he had spent working in silence, every night he'd studied old manuals, every moment he'd wondered if his life would ever change. And now, here he was, standing face to face with an opportunity so enormous it almost didn't feel real. Hannah waited patiently, giving him the same respect she would give any top engineer, not rushing him, not pressuring him, simply believing in him. He thought of his mother working double shifts, his siblings sharing a tiny room, the debts that hung over their heads like clouds. He thought of how many times he'd been overlooked, ignored, dismissed because of the clothes he wore or the background he came from. This offer wasn't just a job. It was a doorway, one that didn't open for people like him. Yet somehow, today, it had. He finally found his voice, steady but emotional, and said he would be honored to join her team. Hannah smiled, a genuine, warm smile that softened her usually sharp expression. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and told him not to let fear steal his future. As they walked together toward the limousine waiting outside, the staff watched in disbelief. The mechanic they barely noticed was now the most important person. Hannah straightened slowly, her eyes fixed on Daniel with a focus that seemed to cut through the noise, the showroom, and everyone standing around them. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, only certainty. She had seen enough. In front of the entire staff, she asked Daniel a question in Japanese so direct and unexpected that even he froze for a second. Would he consider joining her international restoration team? The room went completely silent. Salesmen who had moments ago been pretending to understand her now looked like their world had tilted sideways. Customers stopped browsing and stared openly. Even the manager, who had tried earlier to shoo Daniel away, suddenly rushed forward with a forced smile, eager to take control of the situation. But before he could mutter a single word, Hannah lifted her hand, stopping him cold. "I didn't speak to you," she said sharply. "I spoke to him." The humiliation on the manager's face was instant. People exchanged glances, some shocked, some secretly satisfied. Daniel, meanwhile, stood still, trying to process everything. A billionaire, this billionaire, was choosing him. Not because he wore a suit, not because he rehearsed a pitch, but because he had real skill. Real value. Real talent. The moment Daniel began translating, the entire room seemed to reset. Hannah's expression softened just enough to show she finally felt understood, and she immediately shifted into more complex technical language, almost as if she were testing him. Daniel didn't hesitate. Every word, every mechanical term, every detail flowed out of him with calm confidence. The staff stood behind him in stunned silence, watching a mechanic they barely acknowledged speak like a seasoned engineer, but it didn't stop at translation. When Hannah pointed toward the engine again, Daniel knelt beside it and began examining the components with the ease of someone who had spent half his life taking machines apart and putting them back together. He tapped lightly on the regulator, traced a line along the airflow chamber, and then opened a side panel using the small toolkit he always kept on his belt. Inside, nearly invisible, was a thin hairline crack, something the Billionaire's elite engineers had missed completely. He pointed to it calmly, explaining the exact reason the airflow was failing. Hannah bent down, astonished. Customers leaned closer, realizing they were witnessing something rare. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. At the far end of the service bay, behind a glass wall most customers never even noticed, Daniel wiped the grease from his hands and paused. He couldn't hear much through the barrier, but the rhythm of the words, quick, precise, unmistakably Japanese, reached him clearly. His heart gave a small, unexpected jolt. He knew that language. He had learned it years ago from his father and from second-hand textbooks he bought with whatever little money he saved. He never imagined it would matter here, in a place where people barely noticed him. He glanced toward the showroom and saw the Billionaire's growing frustration, the staff frozen in embarrassment, and the customers whispering. Part of him told himself to stay put. Mechanics didn't step onto the main floor. People like him weren't invited into moments like these. But another part of him, the part that refused to stay small, pushed him forward. He took a deep breath, dropped the cloth, and walked out of the service bay. A few employees frowned, surprised he'd dare show up in his worn boots and oil-stained uniform. But he didn't stop. He approached quietly, respectfully, and when Hannah finally looked at